Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. On the agenda tonight, we have the legend that is Chet Atkins, and this is going to be coming from 1964. This whole performance is 20 minutes, over 20 minutes long, so I'm going to put the link to this in the description below, so you guys can check out the whole thing if you want to, but we're just going to be taking a little section of this, so let's get Chet up on screen and see how he gets on. I'm just going to have to quickly jump in here because I'll just end up watching the whole thing, probably the rest of the 12 minutes or 11 minutes that's left to go. But I just want to say about the techniques that are on show here. This is 1964. And Chet there is just busting out what would be known really as a modern technique in terms of sweeping and arpeggiating chords and playing single notes from a chord. That's what an arpeggio means. But the technique is absolutely flawless, and to see it up close like that is great. We had an angle that was a bit far away, but then we got to see just the way that he's moving across those strings. An interesting thing about the way that Chet plays is that when he was learning to play, he used to listen to the radio and listen to a guy called Merle Travis, who I've done a video on as well. And the way that Merle played was with his thumb and the first finger, but he actually only used that first finger with his thumb, and he had a running bass line and lead notes that actually played in conjunction with that bass line. But Chet thought that Merle was using the thumb, first finger, second finger, and third finger because of the way that it sounded. So that's how Chet then started to learn these pieces that he heard on the radio with these three fingers all going at the same time, which of course meant that he could now push the boundaries rather than Merle was just using one finger, whereas Chet could start doing these arpeggios with chords. He could get so many more notes in there than was possible with the actual way that Merle was playing. So he started to take that, his own technique, really on, which really pushed the boundaries of his sound. And Chet was playing in those country circles, so I'm sure a lot of country players wouldn't know what to make of Chet's playing because he's got such technique, but such adaptable technique that it gives him a totally unique sound, like with those sweep picking sections that we just had there. This just sounds like great Spanish guitar, and the way that he can adjust that right hand to get those rolling arpeggios through those chords, but then also that dexterity of the left hand, his hammer-ons and pull-offs, absolutely second to none. So the sound he was getting was amazing. The other thing about his playing was the expression that he put into it, because he absolutely controlled the dynamics. Even here with just his guitar, he's absolutely making every note sound as he wants it to sound dynamically. And also we had that little section there when he just pops onto that Bigsby as well to just give those open strings a little bit of vibrato and the chords a little bit of vibrato as well. So just adding to that expression all the time throughout his playing. Chet was one of those guys that came from absolutely nothing. His first guitar, he got in a swap with his brother. He swapped an old pistol with the agreement to do some chores. So his brother said, yeah, you can do my chores, and you can have the guitar. So Chet then started playing. It was really bowed. The neck was out of shape, so he could only play the first few frets on it. But then when Chet was at school, he used to play in the bathrooms because of the acoustics. So he would certainly put in his practice in high school. He definitely put in a lot of hours. He actually had a critical asthma condition as well, which meant that in order to sleep, he had to sit in a straight back chair. So he would have the guitar, he'd just be playing literally until he fell asleep. So he'd fall asleep with the guitar on his lap, and then when he'd wake up, he'd still have the guitar there. And that's just a sign of how much practice and how much time it takes to get to this kind of level of having so many techniques and having the mastery of so many techniques. It's literally playing it while you're awake, literally until you sleep. And that's exactly what Chet did. Everything is spot on in all of his techniques, but so many different styles as well. Like I mentioned earlier, that sometimes might not have been seen as country techniques, but he'd throw them in there in that country genre and people wouldn't really know how to take it. And after a while, Chet actually managed to upgrade to a semi-acoustic guitar, and he bought an amp as well. But the only problem was that his house didn't have any electricity. So he had to travel for miles to find somewhere to find an electrical socket to plug in his amp to actually play with that amplified sound. Let's just check out the rest of the performance. There we go. It was a very tiny end part of the performance. But the way that Chet really addresses the audience here, you can tell that he's very introverted, a very shy guy. And Chet moved from one radio station to another early in his career. And I think because of his introverted personality, people didn't really know how to take him. I'm sure in radio in those times it's full of extroverts, but because of the way that he played, as soon as he was let go from one station, he'd be picked up straight away by another station because he was just so great at playing guitar. You just have to listen to him for 2 seconds and you know that this guy's got talent. And after going through a few radio stations at the age of 22, which would have been 1946, he actually got a solo slot on the Grand Ole Opry. And in that, he actually was let go because they said that he didn't sound country enough, because it was a country-based show, of course. And that's exactly what I was saying at the beginning of the video, that he's got so many techniques that he can sound like so many different genres all rolled into one. And that's not a negative. I mean, that's just such a positive that he's got that versatility to play so many different ways. But at the time, they were looking for real country music through and through, and Chet didn't really fit that bill in terms of how he sounded, or at least that's what they thought at the time. So Chet then went away and joined up with the Carter family. And check out my Mother Maybelle Carter video if you don't know who she is. But because of the popularity of the Carter family, the Opry got in touch and said, oh yeah, we want to feature you on our show. So Chet was back in the 50s. He's back on the show that let him go. In the 60s, he actually became the vice president of the country division at RCA Records. So he was now working behind the scenes as well as putting out music himself, being such a talented player, an artist in his own right. Just to list a few names of the people that Chet gave a break to. We had Jerry Reed in there, we had Waylon Jennings, and Willie Nelson as well, Dolly Parton, John Hartford. There's so many big names and just great all-round artists that Chet gave a break to while he was in charge of that country division with RCA Records. And the one that really sticks out to me was Charlie Pride, because Charlie was black, and this was at a time where it wasn't normal to see lots of black people on TV. They didn't get any exposure really. They weren't really highlighted as artists, and Chet gave Charlie that break. break, that chance to actually get up and sing country music. So it was a massive gamble by Chet to actually do that, and you got to give him massive respect for just putting his foot down and saying talent is talent. It doesn't matter what you look like, where you're from. It's just music. It's an art. And, you know, massive respect to Chet for doing that at that time. I know that he was conscious of his appointment at RCA Records because he just saw himself as a musician and a guitarist, not a real business type person. Just a tiny example of his achievements. He won 14 Grammy Awards and the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Grammys as well. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. He's also in the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum. But an absolute legend, not only on stage with his playing and his technical ability on the instrument, but also all the work that he did off stage, giving so many other artists the spotlight in order to launch their careers. And he then worked on the production side to then get these artists to sound great on a record. So the amount of talent this guy had, not only playing, but also that talent for production, is really second to none. An absolute legend in so many different ways. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!